Welcome everybody. Konbanwa. I hope everybody can hear me. On behalf of the RSA, the Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufacturers and Commerce, and on behalf of the RSA Japan Fellowship, my name is Christian Schmitz. I'm the founder of the PDIE, the Purpose-Driven Innovation Ecosystem. And I'm sitting here in the middle of Tokyo in Shibuya. And today we have the topic Wow the World from the regional countryside of Japan. Adam Fulford will showcase the beauty of Japan. This topic is very relevant for the activities of the RSA, because the RSA is generally aiming at the betterment of society by means of regenerative practices, sustainability, education, and other things, also including art and culture. It's a more than 250 years old Royal Society, and it has included many famous figures like Adam Smith, for example, or Karl Marx. And actually, at the moment, the patron of this organization is Queen Elizabeth. So in England, it's a very well respected think tank. And our topic today is extremely relevant and will shift our attention from the metropolitan city into the countryside and into the potential which we can unleash in this internet age when we can utilize the countryside. We have a few participants also among us who can well contribute to this topic. And I myself am also very excited because the Purpose-Driven Innovation Ecosystem is also looking into leveraging sustainable innovation, finding it locally and scaling it globally. And maybe that's also a topic which Adam Fulford will pick up on with his concept of the Shuraku Cloud. Shuraku is the Japanese word for village. And without further ado, I would like to hand over Sarah Beckley.
I'm Associate Director at the British Chamber of Commerce in Japan. I'd like to start by, on behalf of the BCCJ, just thanking you all so much for coming this evening. Thanks to Christian and the RSA Japan Fellows Network, and in particular thanks to Adam Fulford and his wonderful team for bringing us the idea for today's event, Wow the World in Regional Japan, and really helping us bring it to life this evening. I see we have a lot of non-members on the call today, so just to give a quick debrief of the BCCJ. Generally speaking, we deliver projects and events with the goal of bringing important topics to the forefront of conversations, enhancing trust between the UK and Japan predominantly, and building business opportunities for our members by putting in a lot of focus on three key areas, three key pillars. The first is responsible and sustainable business. The second is diversity and inclusion. And the third is digital and tech innovation. And not only does today's event really fall under all three of these pillars, it focuses on something really unique and important, which is rural and regional community engagement. So I hope you find the session interesting, informative, and actually quite eye-opening for many, I'm sure, on the call, for myself included, on some of the real challenges that these rural areas in Japan are facing today. And I also hope you can walk away with some simple, some creative ways for you or your company to get involved, to support rural rejuvenation and to engage with these lovely local communities here in Japan. And over the coming months, you'll see much more focus from the BCCJ on regional Japan, including one which I'm going to mention here, which is an inclusive digital mapping project that we have coming up next month. This will be to highlight, promote, share any spots of historical and cultural significance in Japan that also has a relation to the UK and Japan. This will map British organizations as well, and of course, BCCJ members. As you can imagine, it's quite hard to find everything that should be listed on this map. So if you have any ideas, suggestions for anything that should be listed, please do contact us at info@bccjapan.com. I'm sure Sam can copy and paste our email address into the chat. We also have Tohoku Week coming up next month, and we have our annual flagship events, the Travel and Tourism Think Tank, which will be happening in September. More information on both of these will be available on our website. Okay, I think that's enough from me. Thank you again for joining, everyone. It's great to see so many of you on the call today. I hope you enjoy the event. And without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Adam Fulford, BCCJ member, also CEO of Fulford Enterprises, who'll be leading and moderating the session today. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'd like to express my own thanks, first of all, to Sarah and to Christian for their introduction. And I'd like to say thank you very much to you all for making the time this evening to join this event. I am a fellow of the RSA. I'm also a member of the BCCJ as well. I've been in Japan since 1981, and I've seen Japan from many different points of view. My main work in Japan has been for the national broadcaster, NHK, the Japan Broadcasting Corporation. My company does a lot of work for them in terms of translating TV programs and in some cases making TV programs with them. I've also done a lot of work in tourism. And as a result of my work in tourism, I started engaging with the Japanese countryside about 10 or 12 years ago as a judge in a national contest where beautiful villages were being considered for a prize. As a result of that, I began to be much more interested in what was being lost. I found that a great deal of what I discovered in regional Japan simply was not known to me before I visited these remote locations, and every one of them was different. So we'll be looking more deeply at that theme this evening. And before I go any further, I would like to say a big thank you to one other person, which is Sam Madicott, working behind the scenes this evening to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And he's done an incredible amount of work in making this event successful this evening. So I'd like to thank him, the RSA JFN team, and everyone else at BCCJ. Thank you. So let's move on. Right now, I'd just like to tell you what I'm doing this very week. Today, I put up another post on my Substack newsletter, NowHow. I'm actually writing a book in the form of a Substack newsletter. So later this year, I'm hoping that we'll be putting it into a book form and actually publishing it. You can get through to the newsletter through that QR code. I'm probably not allowed to say that, actually. So please scan the code and you can go through to the Substack newsletter. It's about now and how we use it. And the key thing about now is that for humans, we're always trying to get to some kind of a point B from the point A where we are right now. The key thing is, how do we get there? Every now we encounter, we're doing something. We're doing X. And if we're thinking strategically, we are doing X in order to do Y. So you can see Y is a little bit further in the distance. That's what we do as human beings, put simply, is we walk along many, many different paths in life, from A to B. Every day we walk along a different path. We have many, many different identities. I'm 64 years old, so part of my identity is becoming an old man. I'm from Britain, so part of my identity is being British, but I've been in Japan for 40 years. So all of these things contribute to different ways of thinking, different ways of moving from A to B. And what I'm trying to do is to distill in the Substack newsletter the key points of moving from A to B, doing X in order to do Y. A, we can think of as adequate. This is where we are right now. We want to get to something better. So B could be better, But what I'd like people this evening to be thinking about is that we could be moving from adequate to brilliant. This is my aim for the Japanese countryside and for an engagement with the countryside, is that we can move all of us from adequate to something that's quite brilliant. On that road, the selection of Y and X is absolutely crucial. And that selection also happens now. How do we use this time available to us when we do stuff now? Japan has an incredible tradition of understanding now. In the tea ceremony, for example, there is a phrase, ichigo ichie, which means let's make the most of this once-in-a-lifetime encounter. There's a great focus on making the most of now, traditionally in Japanese culture, which is beginning to weaken. And that's a big theme for me, because I am very eager for the best aspects of Japanese culture to be passed on to future generations, which will include my own children. So what I'm trying to do in the Japanese countryside is this. Now, this may look like the name of quite a well-known business book. What I use this 0 to 1 for is this: 0 to win. Today, we're talking about a subject that for many companies, for many individuals, it's a zero situation. You're not even at A yet, we're just about to get to A, which is how do we engage with the Japanese countryside? So for many of us, it's where do we start? And from there, how do we get to a win? So we'll be looking at that process this evening. And the context is company, and I use this Japanese mark, times, company times community. How can we engage with each other in the countryside to achieve a 0 to win outcome? So for companies, here we are, ethical engagement with a community that enables the company to walk the walk of corporate SDG, ESG policies, while also strengthening the company's brand and operations. I think that may resonate as a message with quite a lot of the companies attending this evening's call. So putting that in terms of the path, here's our X, this is what we want to do right now, ethical engagement with a community. For what purpose? To walk the walk of corporate SDG and ESG policies. Now, I think a lot of companies find that quite challenging, and it's not surprising. It's a really, really difficult area of activity. I think quite a lot of companies talk the talk very nicely about how they're achieving their SDG and ESG goals, but they don't always walk the walk. They sometimes talk the walk, but not necessarily walk it. So how could you actually engage with the Japanese countryside and make a real difference on both sides? Another why that comes out of this is strengthening the company's brand and operations. So even if you're walking one path, you can achieve various different positive outcomes. So that's for companies. What about 0 to win for communities everywhere? Confident engagement with a company that enables the community to access diverse realms of experience and expertise while also strengthening the community's identity and independence. So here, the X is this. What communities around Japan want is a confident engagement with a company in order to access diverse realms of experience and expertise. This is something that many communities in regional Japan lack, is access to experience and expertise in many different realms. And another thing that they want as an outcome is to strengthen their own identity and their independence. So that's the path that I want us to walk along this evening. And one of the key things from the community perspective is confidence. How do you have the confidence to engage with a company? It's not easy to trust an entity that comes from the outside and says, we want to work with you in the realm of CSR, we want to work with you in the realm of, it could be a corporate retreat, it could be corporate training, it could be various types of engagement with that community, but from the perspective of the people in the community, we don't know who you are. Is there any particularly good reason why we should trust you? And that's why my organization, Fulford Enterprises, and the people I know in my network, we are the kind of people who can establish trust very quickly in the countryside through the various activities that we've been trying over the past 5, 6, 7 years. So today, our ethical company times community engagement focus is Fukushima. And I think we don't need to say very much about the tragic past of Fukushima. We're all very familiar with that. But I think that we do need to understand Fukushima from Fukushima's own perspective. And I'm very pleased to welcome this evening Yamada Jun, a friend of mine from some years ago, who is now the CEO of Aizu Electric Power Company. Aizu is in the west and north of Fukushima Prefecture. And I'd like to invite Jun-san now to speak with us a little bit about his view of outsider engagement with the insiders of Fukushima. Jun, over to you.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to get acquainted with everybody. Before I talk, I would be using a 2-minute video to briefly explain some of my activities in Fukushima.
東京電力福島第一原子力発電所の事故で、この会津も放射能にね汚染されてもう永遠に住めない、水は汚染される、土地は汚染される、あの時の恐怖はなかったですね。北方はですね、みんな地産地消の展開ができる、自分たちのエネルギーそのくらいは作り出せると、それで会津電力株式会社ができて50カ所太陽光発電所を建設して、
電気だけを作っていていいのかという議論は当初からありました。電気を使ってユニークな付加価値のある商品を作って地元への還元もできると。
私たちが成功すれば、この会津北方のですね、農業の活性化の一助になるんじゃないかと。
その結果たどり着いたのがブドウでありワインであるということであります。
小高い山の上ですから排水もいいですし、寒暖の差もありますし、北方ワインは条件的には最高だと私は思ってます。
出来上がったワインをもちろんお届けするということだけじゃなくて、この場所に来ていただいて
苗木のオーナーになっていただいたりとか、収穫の時期にはもちろん収穫を手伝っていただいて、
多様な関わり方ができると思うんです。私たち大地を守る会は安全性、放射能測定も含めて確認をして、で自信を持って消費者の皆さんにご紹介したいと思っております。
厳しい冬、雪が降りますけど、日差しが強くなって、それから一気に雪が溶けてって、初夏の頃山の木が芽吹いてね、それから収穫の秋、あらゆるものが手に入る。お酒もワインも何でもござれです。会津は豊かなんです。はい、
北方ワイナリー計画始まる。
Okay, thank you very much for playing this video. Well, my name is Jun Yamada. As introduced by Adam, I have been working in Fukushima for almost 10 years now. Born and brought up in Fukushima, but I left Fukushima at the age of 18 and graduated the university in Tokyo, and since then, I have been working there in the urban city, Tokyo, and some parts of the world. So working for Panasonic and Qualcomm and those IT and communication industry for almost 40 years. And then at the year of 2011, there's a nuclear power plant that's broken, and that the disaster happened. And I don't think I have to explain that about you. But until that very moment, I was not sure, I was not aware that as many as 10 nuclear power plants were located in Fukushima, and all the electricity generated there were transferred to Tokyo to sustain our life in the metropolitan city. And so I was very much at a loss. I was very much shocked about the fact. So I wanted to do something more, but I don't know what to do. So I teamed up with several people in the local community to do something related to the energy generation. Because the nuclear power plant is all about energy. So without doing something by our hands, it would not be easy to comprehend, to understand the entire picture. So and also the renewable energy is going to be very much in need. So we have begun to do with the power plants building. So the reason why I am working there, I am doing something over there in Fukushima is because I was somewhat ashamed of my ignorance of this energy system, and I was I really wanted to get into the inside of the energy, let's say, industry. And although our power plant is still small and the generated electricity is very, very small compared to what is really needed in the region, but I am getting more knowledgeable about how it works. So it's one primary reason is my curiosity, is my eagerness to understand what's happening there in the energy. That is my one of the biggest motivation. And the second reason why I am doing it is it's just because simply I want to enjoy something new. So I don't have any kind of beautiful stories, scenarios, or the theory to share with you. But the activities over there, like you have seen in the video for the winery project, is because I am enjoying it together with the team, with the people over there. So I think that's about it. So one reason is I am doing there, working there is because of my curiosity, is because of my eagerness to learn something. And the other reason is that I just want to enjoy my life. And that Fukushima Aizu is a perfect location for me to enjoy my undertaking. So
Jun, could
I think that's about it as my introduction. And I happen to see a face of my good friends there in Kitakata, Aizu right now. She's Ayako Akiyama, and I think when I am doing something, when I am enjoying doing something over there, I bump into similar people. So who is also there, come back from Tokyo and then doing something exciting and enjoying his or her own life. And one of my good friends happened to be here, so maybe it's let her speak us a few words so that before I end my presentation. So Ayako-san, why don't you say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jun, for introducing me. Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Ayako. I'm from Kitakata, and I'm living in Kitakata. Came back to Kitakata last year. And I'm teaching the original method, Heartful Yoga in Kitakata, and make one project about vacation in Kitakata. Yeah, I'd like to spend peaceful time and with you through the Heartful Yoga, and I'd like to talk about the regional challenges and solutions. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So as Adam, I think this concludes my presentation for now, and maybe you can proceed in a way you like. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Jun, and it was very nice to see a contribution from someone else in Kitakata as well. And we are looking at the theme of Fukushima particularly this evening, but one of the breakout groups later on will be devoted to rural Japan in general. We have other people with us this evening who are very active in different parts of regional Japan. There's somebody, Brendan, who will be leading an RSA event later in the year. And in those breakout groups, perhaps you'll be encountering Jun and other people from regional Japan. It will be an opportunity for you to think with them about the next step. So next, I'd like to focus from a slightly different angle on Fukushima. Somebody who works with me now at Fulford Enterprises is Zoe Vincent. And Zoe lived in Fukushima for 4 years. I'd like Zoe now just to give her perspective on the prefecture. Zoe.
Thank you very much, Adam, and thank you everybody for being here this evening and joining us. As Adam said, I'm currently working at Fulford Enterprises as a project manager, but before that I was working in Fukushima as an overseas promotion specialist for Fukushima Prefecture Tourism and Local Products Association. And my main job was to share information about the prefecture online via social media or blogs, and in person too, to increase the number of international visitors to Fukushima Prefecture. I also coincidentally was an intern at the British Chamber of Commerce during my time as an exchange student, so it's very nice to see some familiar faces today. So first of all, a little bit about Fukushima. I think the word Fukushima became known internationally overnight in March 2011, not for a good reason, but at the time, and even in the years following, when people all over the world thought of the word Fukushima, often they would get confused. They'd be like, is Fukushima the name of a nuclear power station? Is Fukushima like this small town, like on the edge of the coast of Japan where this disaster happened? Is that all it is? And, but I'm sure everybody here knows that Fukushima is the name of a prefecture. And it's a very large one at that. It's the third largest prefecture in Japan. And it's got an absolutely huge amount of variety in terms of culture, climate, local products, history, even dialect throughout the prefecture. Jun, who spoke earlier, is from Aizu, which is the western side, which gets lots and lots of snow in the winter. And on the other side, on the coast, you have really nice temperate weather throughout most of the year. So it's just a huge variety. And in terms of the disaster, there is still a small area that people cannot return to their homes in, but this accounts for less than 3% of the entire area. So it's very small, and actually not a huge, when I've been talking about Fukushima in the past to people, there are people who don't quite realize that. So I think it's important to stress. And though through international tourism campaigns, the prefecture has been rebuilding its image very strongly and steadily, but there is still some misunderstanding about safety there, even within Japan. So my aim during my previous position, and also something that I'm still passionate about today, is helping people all over the world realize that the disaster, it did happen, of course, but it is just one part of Fukushima's story. And aside from that, we have absolutely fantastic sake, for example, and wine, as we will hear this evening. Got incredible, interesting samurai history, lots of hands-on cultural experiences presented by artisans, wonderful nature and beautiful scenery. As you can see behind me, this is the Tadami Line in Aizu, which is a very, very lovely place to travel, and lots of lovely, friendly people. It was an absolute joy to live there, and it's great that such an amazing place is just 2 hours away from Tokyo, or 90 minutes if you're going to Koriyama, which is the other place that we'll be talking about today. So what makes Fukushima special in a business context? And 3 main things I'd like to speak about here. The first is that there's a lot happening in Fukushima. It's very exciting. One of the reasons for this is that because of the Fukushima Innovation Coast Framework, which is a nationally led project which started in 2014, and it basically means there's lots of investment leading to technical innovation in fields of robotics, energy, forestry and fisheries, and medical care and more, mostly centered on the coastal region of Fukushima Prefecture, which is very exciting for people, for businesses interested in, for example, renewable energy investment. The second point is that investing in Fukushima is an opportunity to make a really big difference to individuals or companies that have been really badly affected by post-disaster stigma or misunderstandings about the area. And this is especially true in the sector of agriculture. There is still work to do to repair the image of businesses and products. And the final point is that precisely because of the disaster, people from Fukushima are very proud of where they've come from. They're proud of their areas and their communities, their stories, and they want to share that pride. And this is actually true also for people the foreign residents of Fukushima as well, myself included, as a former resident, really feel pride for having lived in Fukushima, and you always want to honor that connection. And this leads to a spirit of cooperation, even between people from the same sector. For example, in Kitakata, which Jun was talking about, there are many sake breweries, but these sake breweries cooperate and work together to promote local sake as opposed to being rivals with each other. And I'm sure there are many people who are open to the possibility of working with international organizations if the main goal is to create more Fukushima fans around the world. So I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody today, and thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Here is Zoe actually appearing in a video that we made for TV. This was shown on NHK World, and there she is making some ramen in Kitakata. This was one of the most successful videos we've made for NHK. In terms of social media, it hasn't set any records, but we got about 100,000 views for this, which we were very pleased about. From my own perspective, my connection with Fukushima began when I represented a sake brewery. I became there, in Japanese, they call it an image character. So I appeared in their commercials on TV for quite a long time. And that was what formed my emotional connection with Fukushima. After the disaster, I thought I've got to try to find some way to give something back to this community, which means so much to me. The sake in Fukushima is unbelievably good. And I know that there are going to be people in other parts of Japan and say, oh no, ours is better. But anyway, it's one of the great assets of Fukushima, this fantastic sake. And I was very honored to be able to represent that sake brand in Fukushima. So we're now going to start focusing in a little bit more closely on one community in Fukushima, and that community is Osemachi. This is part of Koriyama City. Now, Koriyama is the biggest city in Fukushima. I think it's got about 330,000 people. It's a successful regional hub. Only about 80 minutes from Tokyo on the Shinkansen, very easy to get to. And then out to the west of Koriyama is Osemachi, a little rural community. Osemachi is struggling with many of the problems that you find in other parts of Japan. The population is growing more elderly. The population is going down. There are very few children. And they're struggling to find new paths forward. And right now, I'm working, thanks to Koriyama City, I'm working with the people in Osemachi to try to identify new paths to the future. And that's one reason why I'm focusing on Osemachi this evening. But rather than hear about Osemachi from me, we're going to be hearing about somebody who actually works there. And he also, like Jun, is working at a winery. So now we're going to be moving on and hearing about the winery and his feelings for Fukushima from Kawauchi Koki. Now, this video is in Japanese, and I'll be doing simultaneous interpretation. Sam will give you instructions in a few moments, but I'd just like to say that the original aim for this event was for Zoe and me particularly to be in Osemachi at the winery, presenting the event to you this evening, but because of this current state of emergency, that became very complicated and actually impossible to do. And so we're presenting it in this digital environment instead. But we actually managed to speak with Kawauchi-san the other day, and this is what he told us. But Sam, first of all, what should people do to be able to hear my interpretation?
Sure. So very brave of you, Adam, to not only present today, but also do live interpretation. I'm about to turn on the interpretation feature. So for those people who want to follow along in English, please toggle it at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Adam, you'll be muted from the main channel now. Sarah, if you could play the video.
皆さんこんにちは。
Hello everyone. My name is Kawuchi Koki.
52歳です。
I'm 52 years old.
このワイナリーを運営している団体、
The organization that runs this winery is in Tokyo. The name of the company is Mitsubishi Shoji, in English Mitsubishi Corporation.
この例えば果物を作るとか、
And I work for Mitsubishi
お
Shoji.
酒を売る。
So making fruit, making alcoholic drinks, selling drinks. I wasn't a logistics person in the company, or I haven't been. I've been working in computers for 30 years. So why am I here?
この福島県郡山の出身者だからです。
Because I was born here in
ちょう
Koriyama.
ど震災が起きたときに、私はドイツで働いて
At the time of the disaster, this is in 2011, I was in Germany.
こう気にしながら生活していたんですけども、
And I was hearing about the damage. It concerned me greatly.
タクシーの中のラジオからですね、
On the day of the disaster, I was in a taxi,
流れたんです。福島
and the news came through on the radio in the taxi.
ラジオから聞こえたんです。で、ヨーロッパにいて、なかなか日本のニュースが
In
流れることは
Europe,
ありません。まあ、あっても例えば
You don't normally hear about news from Japan. You might hear about Tokyo, you might hear about Osaka, but you very seldom hear about
っていうのがですね、
places like Fukushima. And there was this name coming out of the radio.
まあ、事件のこのインシデントの、まあ、世界的なですね影響、まあ、それをこう感じて、自
So
分
it
の
was
まあふるさとが
an event with a global impact, and it made me wonder about what would happen to my home area. Was it threatened with destruction? Would it be unlivable?
泣いた記憶があります。
The future seemed very, very sad,
ここに
and I actually cried.
11月、去年の11月です。
I came here
その前
to
は
Osemachi in November last year, that's 2020. Before that, I was in Bangkok for 5 years.
福島県の出資者が集まる県人会というコミュニティ
In Bangkok, there was an association of people from Fukushima, and I was a
海外
member.
から応援しようという活動に従事していました。
We were supporting Fukushima from outside
実際の
Japan.
と福島の、プロダクトは
After the disaster,
海外の輸出が禁じられました。
products from Fukushima could not be
タイ
exported.
がですね、福島の、お魚、これ常磐ものという非常に有名なお魚を
We actually had plans to bring in a special fish from Fukushima,
パーティーをしましょうという
Joban Mono, and have a party in Bangkok.
実は急にキャンセルになったんで
But
す。
the day before that,
それは市民
it
団体
was suddenly
が出ちゃ
cancelled.
いけないというふうに
There was a citizens group that opposed having that party.
やっぱり私は
It was very, very sad and disappointing.
こういったその風評被害、
And I thought, well, if I come back to
仕
Japan,
事に就こうという
I want to
このワイナリー
get rid of this stigma, this reputational damage, and that's how I ended up here.
そういった風評ですとか不安というのは、特に風評はそういった特に農産物にはつきやすいです。
So this reputational damage particularly
そう
affects
いった
agricultural
農作
goods.
物、果物からですね、この人々の気持ちをこう
So
まろやか
fruit
にするようなお酒がもしてきて、でそれがですね、
And things like sake, which make people feel more relaxed and friendly.
払拭できるんじゃないか。
And they've got fantastic examples of this in Fukushima, and I wanted to sweep away the reputational damage.
その気持ちで今、
It was a way of giving something back to Fukushima.
もうこの
And that's how I feel about my work here.
を東京側で管理している、部門、これはまあ CSR を
The part of the company that is running this
監督している
winery
この
is
責
the
任者
CSR
が
department
私の友達だったんです
of Mitsubishi Corporation. And the person in charge is a friend of
タイ
mine.
から帰ってくるときにその責任者に
When I came back
して
from Thailand,
ぜひ僕
I
を使ってくれ
contacted him
僕は
and I said, please use me.
福島ダイアレクト
I'm from Fukushima.
私が一番三菱商事を前に
I speak the Fukushima dialect better than anybody else at Mitsubishi
だ
Corporation.
から僕を使ってくれっていう
I had lots of friends in Fukushima.
私、
So please
その
use me.
お酒の専門を作るスペシャリティプロフェッションは持っていません。
I'm not a professional at making sake.
この福
What
島
I can
郡
do
山の出身者としてファンを作ることだと思って
as somebody born in Fukushima is to increase fans of the area and the winery.
やっぱり
And that's what I'm putting all my energy into now.
先生
So I've got friends from a long time ago, my teachers,
コンタクトをして我
the
々
people I
の
used to hang out
ワイ
with,
ナリーを設立した意義を
I'm contacting them and telling them the meaning of this, the significance of this winery. That's what I'm doing in my everyday life now.
何もない。田んぼしかない。畑しかない。
There's nothing here, just paddy fields and mountains. It's the middle of nowhere. So when I was growing up, I just wanted to get out. I wanted to go abroad. I went to university in Tokyo. And then I moved into Mitsubishi Corporation and started seeing the world. Then came the disaster. And I really felt I'm somebody from Fukushima. And really, just tears poured when I heard about the disaster. When I came back, I understood what was so great about there being nothing here. The delicious food and so on. Fantastic fruit. It was an amazing new discovery for me. When the seasons change, the scenery changes. We get swans in the paddy fields in the winter. And at this time of year, we're planting rice, and the smells even change. We have a seminar room here. 30 people can fit in there. And outside, there's room for more people. The products that we make here, I'd like them to be renowned around the world. When people think about Fukushima, they think about the disaster. And I want to get rid of that prejudice with our high-quality products and win prizes and win praise. And I want the name Fukushima to be known in a new way. So what do I recommend? What we really think is good here at the winery is cider. That's one of the things that we make here. In Britain, it won an award, it's won several awards. And we started exporting to Hong Kong last year. And that's one of our strengths, the cider. And then we make wine here. We now collaborate with 13 winemakers in the area, the grape makers, grape growers. This area wasn't actually known for making grapes or wine, so we started from scratch. Now, wine is a very competitive, the competitive circumstances for wine are serious. So many different wines to compete with. So we are focusing on things like brandy, distilled products. And we've got a very high standard. Japan is famous for its high-quality whiskey. And we think that we can compete also in this area, in the international market. Koriyama is famous for carp. And people make food from the carp. There is a fishery just down the road here. He's got a big lake, and that's where he has the carp. So the carp can be eaten as sashimi with miso. Very, very good. We collaborate closely with companies from Fukushima and from Koriyama in order to raise the overall impact of the Fukushima brand. So we're making new products in collaboration. So, for example, sake combined with chocolate, or alcohol combined with chocolate. We're making 70,000 bottles of liquor at this winery each year. I think wine and also distilled drinks, and we'll soon run out of space to make any more. It's going to be difficult for us to increase our volume significantly. So we could collaborate with somewhere else to make more, but rather than scaling up, we're not really thinking about that. Instead, we'd like to stick with this scale of facility and make sure that we deliver to the consumer exactly the kind of quality we want to deliver. That's the kind of operation I'm aiming for. So rather than scale, at this scale, we want to create new fans. We want to be that kind of winery. So I want to get pride back. I want to get our pride back. It was for the human race a very dishonorable thing to happen to any prefecture. And I want to get that pride back. Yep, I can do email communication, that's no problem. Verbal communication is also okay. So that was Kawuchi-san. And we look forward to returning to the winery one day for an event that we'll be focusing on later this evening, which is a kids' farmers market. This is one of the ideas that we've started thinking about in Osemachi. But let me just give you a bit of background about rural Japan generally. Why do I care? Well, one reason why I care is quite obvious, and I've already hinted at it. In rural Japan, there's buried treasure absolutely everywhere. It's not even buried, it's actually in plain sight. But people just don't notice it. And it's not very well communicated about. And so until you go to these tiny communities and remote locations, you'll never know what treasures are out there. But there is a significant amount of treasure out there in regional Japan. But there's another far more important reason for us to be doing this event this evening, which is, as we've experienced over the past year and a half, urban culture is fragile. So we've developed this amazing urban culture all around the world, but you bring along a virus, an unexpected situation for that culture to cope with, and it's very bad at coping with that. We found that our lifestyle has been seriously disrupted. Many people have died, and it's a tremendous tragedy. Many other people have been affected by those deaths and those illnesses. That is also a tragedy. Beyond that, the world economy is suffering as a result of what's happened to the virus, and we're seeing great difficulty in managing risk in various parts of the economy and the political world. So urban culture has demonstrated quite clearly over the past year and a half that it's fragile. So what about rural culture? Here we are in Yamagata Prefecture. This is Idemachi, and in Idemachi, this is Nakatsugawa. It's a village of 250 people. As you can see, it's fabulously beautiful. I've been working with the people in Nakatsugawa, as this community is called, since 2014. Again, trying to find new paths to the future. Looks beautiful, it's a great place to visit. In the old days, it was incredibly tough. Life was so tough in the regions of Japan, particularly in a place like Tohoku, where they get loads of snow in the winter. It's really tough. And nevertheless, when you see photographs from 90, 100 years ago, as you can see in this photograph, these two young women are smiling all over their faces. So it wasn't grim all the time. People found ways to cope with this really tough lifestyle and enjoy their life. Not only that, their villages were sustainable. So these little places out in the Japanese countryside, Nakatsugawa, 300 people, 250 people now, but say 50, 60 years ago, it was up above 1,000, maybe 2,000 people. It's gone down very, very quickly, but for many years, it was a sustainable community. So what underpinned that sustainability? Here we have 44 disappearing elements of lifestyle. Now, these elements of lifestyle were identified by a Tokyo professor. I'm not sure if he's actually from Tokyo, but he is now at the Tokyo City University, Tokyo Toshi Daigaku. His name is Furukawa Ryuzo, and he's been a tremendous source of inspiration for me. He interviewed 600 people, and those interviews are still continuing. He calls them hearings. People aged 90 and over. And he asked them, what was life like when you were growing up, before you became grown up, before the war in the 1930s? What was life like then? And he just sits there with his recorder turned on and he listens. And on the basis of what he hears, over the years, he's been able to distill 44 values that belong to this lifestyle that has largely disappeared from Japan, particularly since the Second World War. And here they are, all listed up. And if you look at them, what you notice after a while is that there are actually groupings that you can make quite easily. One of the big groupings is around nature. So all of these ones that I've put in blue here, they have some kind of connection with nature. So nature and being close to nature, engaging with nature on an everyday basis, is an incredibly important part of a sustainable lifestyle. It's an incredibly important part of feeling content with everyday life. And there's another important one over here on the right, which is strong links between town and village. So even when the villages were sustainable, they knew the importance of linking with other communities as well. So all of these little lifestyle values, some of them are very simple, like walk everywhere. If you start combining them into groups, then you find what is the basis of a sustainable lifestyle. And now my contention, my hypothesis, is that it's not just in Japan. You'll find these lifestyle values in villages all over the world, but increasingly, because of something that's been happening in modern civilization, those cultures are being buried and they're disappearing very, very quickly. What are we losing? This, for me, is the key theme. Because without this cultural diversity, what will happen? Well, we will die. We've already seen the danger that comes with a virus that we don't know how to cope with. But you don't have to look at a virus. For example, you could take something, I believe I'm right in saying that bananas are essentially clones of each other. So what happens if a pest suddenly emerges that destroys a banana crop? It could destroy the world's supply of bananas. It could happen to other things that we regard as automatically part of our everyday convenient lives. And that is the key word, convenience. What has been destroying cultural diversity? It's convenience. Convenience kills cultural diversity. The little village out in the countryside, when the roads came, oh, convenient for getting out of the village. So a lot of people left their very tough village life in pursuit of convenience. We've all done it. I left Britain in very much the same way. I grew up in North Devon, and I thought I want to go to a big city. I didn't make it to a very big city. I started in Nottingham, but I ended up in Tokyo on the other side of the world. And it's only been over the last 10 years that I thought, whoa, wait a minute, what have I left behind? And is there something that maybe my own ancestors are thinking, hey, shouldn't you be looking a little bit more closely at this that we spent so much time developing, and now you're just leaving it behind, you're throwing out perhaps the baby with the bathwater. What should we be looking at in traditional culture that we are now not looking at? So in rural Japan, what am I doing there? Well, I'm trying to address these three challenges. There are no people, the population is going down so quickly. Because the people are disappearing, the people with leadership qualities are very, very busy in the countryside. And so they, in effect, cannot think strategically about the future. They cannot engage with people who might be coming to offer them new paths forward in the form of new business. So the no capital problem is a serious one. It's very difficult to address, but maybe we can address the no people problem. And that's something that I've been trying to do in the countryside. And now we're going to be hearing from somebody else who works with me at Full Food Enterprises, Priya. And Priya last year spent 5 months in that little village in Yamagata as what I call a karisonmin. So she was a community intern, if you like. And here you can see Priya taking some food into, it's a farmhouse B&B. She's serving lunch there, I think, or maybe dinner. And this was one of the roles that she played when she was in the countryside there. She was doing many other things as well. And I'd like Priya now, if you would, to, we'll be playing Priya's video. And then after that, I'll have a quick chat with Priya. So Sarah, could we now see Priya's video, please? Okay, so I'm just going to have a quick chat with Priya now, but one thing I'd like you to notice about that is that Priya made that video entirely herself, and she entered that quote at the end about the importance of trust, which brings us back to this whole theme of building confidence between the village and the people who come to the village. So the role of the Kari Sonmin, the role of the community intern, is as a liaison between the village and the people outside the village. Priya, this photograph shows one of your activities last year. What was going on here?
Hi, everyone. So before I talk about this photo, I just want to say I've been in Japan for almost 4 years, and the 5 months I spent in Nakatsugawa has been the best so far. So with this one, I was doing a freeze-dry food experiment. Nakatsugawa has access to a lot of sansai, which means mountain vegetables, which is quite hard to get in Tokyo. So what I basically did was get some cooked recipe with the vegetables and take it to this research institute called Yamagata Research Institute of Technology, and use freeze-dry equipment to see if we can freeze dry it and then turn it back and see how that works. It's a process that took over a week, and the local people helped me a lot with making the food and everything. So like I mentioned, it's something that's quite hard for a Kari Sonmin to do it by themselves, and also for a local person without access to somebody from the outside. It's quite hard to do something like this. So this is one of the sort of aims that we wanted to do with this project, where you explore possibilities that is quite difficult on your own, but when you work with the community, it's quite easy to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Priya. And Priya will be leading one of the breakout rooms later on, devoted to the theme of community interns. But let me just complete the story here. So this freeze-dried food, we've been thinking of various ways in which this could be commercialized. But even before it's commercialized, if they've got a stock of freeze-dried food in a place like Nakatsugawa and in many other communities, then when there's a disaster in Japan, and unfortunately in Japan disasters occur very frequently, then people who have to evacuate to a gym, for example, would have access to very good food, very nutritional food very quickly. So that's one possible use. It's the kind of food that could quite easily end up in a gourmet dish in Singapore or in London or in New York, fabulously unusual and tasty. It's also something, because it's freeze-dried, you can leave it for years and it's still good. So you might imagine having a dinner of Nakatsugawa food in 2040 and reminiscing about the old days with food that tastes like you got it from the mountains just yesterday. So there are various different ways in which we could develop this product. One of the ways in which I've been focusing on it for the time being is as a form of barter product. So what would we barter freeze-dried food for? Well, this takes us to Uganda. About a year or so ago, I started contacting Paul Waswa here in a small village in Uganda. Paul looks after socially vulnerable children in the village where he lives. And one of the things he was doing was building an oven so that they had access to some bread, because they very rarely even ate bread. So I supported that when he was crowdfunding the oven. And through the conversation, I worked out that they had a lot of coffee in the village, and I thought, well, maybe we could bring coffee beans into Japan from his village, and in return we could send the freeze-dried food to Uganda. Paul could sell that at a premium in the local market, but also provide nutritious food to the children under his care, and that would be very beneficial for them. What would we do with the coffee that came to Japan? Well, in Nakatsugawa, they have a snow storehouse. If you put coffee beans in the storehouse, and it's already being done commercially, it changes the flavor profile of the coffee. It makes it taste really nice. And so we could put those Ugandan beans in this coffee house, mature them, and sell that coffee at a premium in the Japanese market. So that's the kind of activity that we've been trying to develop in these communities through this kind of engagement. Let's take a quick look at the model. So we have a local committee. There's somebody on the Nakatsugawa side who runs a kind of a future committee. We have about 5 members of that committee. There's a local business that helps us with what you'll be seeing in just a moment, an online shop. So they handle the fulfillment of the orders through the online shop. We need this online shop, a community portal in English. which we're using Shopify for at the moment. And the key ingredient, as we've been hinting at, is the community intern, somebody who acts on both sides. So I call this Shuraku OS. As Christian said at the beginning, Shuraku means village or settlement in Japanese. So this is a kind of operating system that we can apply at the village level, at the even smaller than the village level, if necessary. And what I'd like to do is to build a network of these Shuraku OS nodes, which would then form Shuraku Cloud, a network of Shuraku OS nodes, and that would provide opportunities for villages all over the country and eventually all over the world to access the village values that are available in that network, and also the kind of scale that is available in a city population, but you'd be just going through the network to the population of the villages everywhere. So that's the basic idea. Then this is the online shop that we're operating at the moment, and you can get to the shop through that QR code. And MS Nakatsugawa here is the name of the URL of the Shopify shop. And now I'd like to ask Sarah to play another video that Priya made recently, which publicizes a new service.
懐かしいものたくさんいただいて、喜んでいます。
I just wanted to say it's really delicious. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And that countryside cooking class is now available. And if you live in Japan, we'd be very happy for you to sign up so that you can try some of those mountain vegetables for yourself. As I said, Priya will be leading a breakout group on the value of a community intern. Now, if you're with the JET program, and I believe that some people with us this evening are indeed on the JET program, Zoe and other people in working with us at Fulford Enterprises right now have been ALTs and CIRs in the past. But it's exactly the kind of step forward that you might want to make after completing your job with the JET program. And one thing that I'm really hoping is that companies will consider the possibility of sponsorship of the ALTs and CIRs when they leave the JET program as community interns, so that we can really start building out in the regions and making the whole Shuraku Cloud concept work for us and for you. So at this stage, I'd just like to stop quickly. If anybody has any questions, I can take a couple of questions now. We've already been through a lot of material. So would anyone like to ask me anything? Sam, have you noticed anything in the chat that you'd like to bring to my attention?
Yes. Hello, Adam.
Hello.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Priya. Very interesting what you're trying to do, and also trying to bring the corporate social, and having worked with the Japanese investment bank back in the 80s, as well as worked for the Americans and that. And you rightly said in your presentation that the CSR and the ESG is going to be difficult to implement, because the bottom line is what they focus on more than the top line. And I understand you also from Nottingham, and that I live in Luton, Bedfordshire, and I'm very happy if I can help you with your project in Uganda, because I was born in Uganda. I was part of the Idi Amin refugees that came to London in the UK. So I'm settled here in the UK and working on the UN SDG goals with the schools in Luton to promote well-being through agriculture, through allotments for children, rather than vegetable allotments for adults only. So those are the kind of things that I'm focusing on. But at the same time as well-being, we're also focusing with schools on the climate change and many other little things that the schools want to do. So I can go to the councillors of Luton and challenge them through the children, because it's their future that the councillors are playing with. Because everybody wants to take politically correct, but when it comes to the bigger picture, they don't want to be correct, you see. So that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm really happy with what you're doing, with what Priya is trying to do. I love Japan. I think Japan has got fantastic, and Japan can actually lead the world, which I did tell Christian. I wish Japan made a bit more noise of what they're doing, and particularly Africa, who love the Japanese. I think there is so much Japan can give. Japanese culture, it's amazing, and their agriculture and everything. I would give my life for Japan too.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very encouraging to hear. And I think about the quietness of the Japanese voice. That's something that foreign residents of Japan can actually do, is give voice to Japan in the international arena. If it's okay, I would like to move on now, because I'd like to move into the business engagement, really, so that we can see how, in fact, we can contribute perhaps even to the bottom line of companies that are getting involved, but certainly contribute indirectly to things that the companies want to do. So at the end, after I've spoken for maybe another 10 or 12 minutes, we'll have a breakout session. You already know about the community intern. Priya will be leading that breakout room. Here's another one, the ethical engagement of company and community in rural Japan. That will be just the general theme of rural Japan. And for example, Brendan, I mentioned earlier, might want to be in that room. We have other people who might want to speak about things going on in Niigata. Jun might want to contribute his experience and expertise in that context as well. There's some, I think, a representative of, is it Yokota-san from Camping with Soul, who would like to speak about their own engagement in regional Japan. So please share information about your various hopes and experiences in regional Japan. Then breakout number 3 will focus specifically on Koriyama. We have representatives of Japanese businesses in Fukushima this evening in the event, and I would like to take this chance to speak with them in the breakout room number 3, Koriyama. I'll be there with Zoe. So in all of these breakout rooms, people will be taking notes, and then at the very end, we'll come back to the main room and people can summarize. We'll have 3 people summarizing what happened in those rooms. So rural Japan is an opportunity to share good news with stakeholders about these subjects. And as we were just hearing, SDGs, ESG, they're very difficult subjects for companies to engage with in a way that is absolutely meaningful, because they're such challenging subjects, but we can contribute in all of these areas. Let's start with common corporate headaches, and I'm thinking particularly about companies that are based in Japan. Name recognition. You might have names that are well known in Britain that people don't really recognize in the Japanese market. I'm not going to name any particular names, but some very big names in Japanese business are probably not really very well known in Japan. So name recognition is one thing that companies struggle with here. Onboarding, getting the right staff, retention, keeping the right staff, the cultural fit. So the way that people are thinking in as expatriates in companies working in Japan, sometimes that doesn't fit very well with Japanese culture, and that's something that companies need to address. And there's the business fit as well. The way they do business in Japan quite often is not a very good fit for general Japanese expectations. They also need access to effective guidance, but it's quite difficult to get that access. Common corporate headaches. So let's take a look at the next slide. Only one word has changed. Common community headaches. Communities have just the same problems. So these little communities like Nakatsugawa, they've got very poor name recognition. Onboarding, it's very difficult for them to get new members to move into the community. Retention, as I was saying, the roads were built out there. People use those roads to move away to the big city. Retention has been a huge problem in the Japanese countryside for decades. The cultural fit, they're not actually fitting into Japanese culture very well, or they would have been successful. The business fit, they're not fitting well in terms of business for various reasons, including the depopulation, the aging of the population, and they constantly need access to effective guidance, which is very difficult for them to get. So we're trying to think about these two sides as mirroring each other. So both sides have something to contribute to the conversation. Both sides have something to gain from the conversation and the engagement. What's in it for the company? Well, you get to do all of these things: cultivate staff skills, loyalty, and morale, build and consolidate an even greater reputation in Japan, learn about demographic trends before they impact you. And I think this is something that it's very easy to forget in Tokyo, is that what's happening out in Yamagata and in Fukushima and these little villages right now is going to happen to you 20 years from now, and it's been happening in those villages from 30, 40, 50 years ago. There's a lot of experience and expertise in the realm of communities fading away. So what else can you get? You understand the roots of Japanese culture, which is incredibly valuable for doing business in Japan. Identify ways to bring SDG and ESG commitments to life. Explore the nature and value of resilience thinking, which is the hallmark of Japanese village life. Get outside your comfort zone and recharge your batteries. The perfect retreat, or as I like to say, advance. You can have a corporate advance in the Japanese countryside. Engage efficiently and effectively with a tally partner. So as I was saying, it's like a mirror. What matches, what doesn't match, how can we fill the gaps? Reflect on every aspect of business in the mirror of community. Take a pioneering stand for cultural diversity. You will find a different form of culture in Japan in every village that you visit. Something will be different in every single village, starting with the food. Okay, so what's in it for the community? You get to work with a community intern, a key to unlocking potential, grow the circle of people who make special events a success. When we go to places like Nakatsugawa, we quite often do things like help them take down a stage after a summer festival. Actually, physically working with members of the local population is an incredibly fast route to trust. Access diverse realms of experience and expertise from the companies coming in. Learn about ways to support community development. Companies are very good at building communities. And so the communities out there in rural Japan can learn a lot about your own practices. You can collaborate with people who will engage attentively. If the companies come in with the right attitude, with the right attentive engagement, it will pay dividends. You can scale up mutual support in a growing network. That's what Shuraku Cloud is all about. Enjoy economies of scale via that network. Explore an exciting, inspiring new identity. These villages, people really don't think they have anything going for them. We heard what Kawuchi-san was saying about there's nothing here, it's just fields, it's mountains, there's nothing. When people understand that a lot of foreign visitors actually want that and they think it's fantastic, their opinion of where they're living changes. And that becomes an exciting new identity for them to explore, and they can become a beacon of hope for others. So if we have a successful engagement with Nakatsugawa, wham, all over Japan, little villages will be thinking, we want to do the same thing that Nakatsugawa is doing, let's do it. And that, again, will be a tremendous opportunity for business. Okay, part two, what's in it for the company? You too get to exactly the same stuff. Everything. You get that too in the company. So I'll leave the list up there, but it's just exactly the same as what I said just now. Working with a community intern is going to be a key to unlocking your potential. All of these other things benefit you too. You will be a beacon of hope for others. Part three, what's in it for the company? Well, just think of the many possible positive outcomes you could generate by sharing each step of the journey with your stakeholders and the world. Tremendously powerful messaging is possible in this context, and that has to be good for a lot of companies. So specific examples of engagements. In Nakatsugawa, they have a hotel that is not being used. I've written about this in the blog post today on Substack. What if it was a BCCJ retreat? It could be a place where companies from Britain could go there, they could have events in Nakatsugawa using that hotel as a base. They have a closed school there. It could be a great venue for a traveling market. They have farms where the British School in Tokyo, for example, they could go there on school trips, learn from local children about how to plant rice, how to harvest rice, how to pick mountain vegetables. Great for team building. Community intern. Okay, what about this sponsorship? It would be fantastic to find somebody in the audience this evening that really wants to get behind sponsorship of a community intern. The farmhouse B&Bs, they are treasures. Every single farmhouse B&B is different, and these would be the sources of things like the freeze-dried food production. So once again, before we get into the breakout sessions, are there any questions?
Phil, I believe you had a question. Okay, if you're muted, I'm just going to read it out. It's actually a really good one, Adam. Will the slides be shared following today's session?
Yes, I'm very happy to share the slides, so we'll make sure that happens. The event itself is being recorded, and we'll put an edited version of it up on the internet, probably, what is it, YouTube?
Yes, we're hoping to have a version up by Friday.
So today's focus is a kids' farmers market in Osemachi Koriyama. We're thinking specifically about the winery that we visited earlier. So let's just get one more comment now from Kawauchi-san about the appropriateness of using that facility for an event involving children. Sarah, please.
我々が持っているブドウ畑、ここでいろんなブドウの木の手入れをする、これに子どもたちにインボルブしてもらうという活動は非常に価値があると思います。自分で作ったブドウでここでお酒を作ると。で、20歳、20歳になった時にそのブドウを成人した記念品としてプレゼントする。こういうやり方あると思ってますし、あとここの場所ですよね。ちょっと見えませんけど、ここには非常に広い庭があります。で、ここはオーセというのは名前と通り人と人々が会うというその出会いのワイナリーになれると思っています。特にこの芝生の活用をしてですね、人々が出会うようなコミュニティになるようなそういったイベントも開きたいと思ってるんですね。その時は子どもさんが主役になるような、例えば盆踊りですとかキャンプですとか、あと動物とかですね、犬と遊ぶようなそういった場所も提供できる、そういった演出もできるんだと思っています。
Yes, thank you very much, Sarah. Of course, I forgot that I was supposed to be interpreting. So very quickly, let me just give you a quick summary of what Kawauchi-san said. He was saying that they grow grapes there. That's a great opportunity for children to find out about how grapes are grown. So that would be one educational opportunity for the children. Of course, they could be selling those grapes in the farmers' market along with local produce of various forms. They've got fantastic carrots, for example, locally as well, and a facility where people with disabilities are contributing to the success of the farm. That kind of engagement would be possible. He didn't mention that, but that is also possible in the community. He was saying that they've got this great space outside. Oh, one thing he was saying about the grapes was that children might pick the grapes. They would actually make a bottle of wine and then hand that bottle of wine to somebody who becomes 20 from the local community to mark their coming of age. In Japan, you become an adult when you're 20. And he was saying that there's plenty of space outside for people to enjoy themselves in the open air. And he was saying that children would also be able to play with dogs and pets and so on in that space as well. He was saying that Osemachi includes the character for meat. The Osemachi, the first character, is actually Ao, and that means meat. And he was saying he's hoping that the winery will actually become a place where people experience new encounters. So those are his hopes. He's very much behind this whole idea of what we're doing there. And I also know that the local community is behind this because we've been doing workshops in Osemachi for the past few months when the state of emergency has allowed. And the question that we were trying to answer is, so what do people in this community actually want? What is their vision for the future? And I've been using some of the tools that I've been writing about on the Substack newsletter. We've been using some of those tools to create a vision of the future. And that vision is a town in which children feel excited to be there. It's very important for people in this community to think about children having an exciting future there so that they won't all take the path that Kawauchi-san took and move away. Of course, they might move away, but maybe the attachment will become so strong that they do come back and contribute to the future of the community. So that was the vision. And I proposed at the last workshop, well, how about a kids' farmers market? What could we develop around that idea? And there seemed to be generally enthusiastic responses to that, and especially from the winery. So not only Kawauchi-san, but other members of the team at the winery were very quickly coming up with ideas for engaging with children in that context. So what can we think of this evening? It's time for the breakout groups. And once again, the Kids Farmers Market in Osemachi as our focus. Breakout 1 is about a community intern. So Priya will be explaining about the community intern. I do strongly recommend people from the JET program to listen to Priya's story and ask her questions about what she did. If you don't have time to get onto the Kids Farmers Market, don't worry. But any insights that you can bring in terms of what the community intern might do to contribute to the success of a Kids Farmers Market, that would be great. Breakout room 2, rural Japan. Please do try to think about a Kids Farmers Market in each context if it's useful for directing your attention. So everybody's trying different things in regional Japan. Use this one context. How could all of your activities grow out of a Kids Farmers Market, and how could companies get involved in that context? And then breakout room 3, which is where I'm going to be, is Koriyama. So working with local companies, working with British companies based in Tokyo, what could we be doing in Osemachi for the success of a Kids Farmers Market? I've been speaking a lot, so I'm intending to take a bit of a backseat and let everybody else speak for some time now. We're aiming to have 20 to 25 minutes in the breakout rooms, and then we will be coming back to the main room where we'll be hearing reports from each room, and we'll be winding up the event. So let's move on to the breakout rooms. Here they are all. Here they all are. So Sam, please can you move ahead with that?
Okay, everyone is back indeed. Moving forward, Adam, would you like one person to present? I know we're getting a bit short of time. We have 14 more minutes.
Yes. So if we could just go directly to Priya and just have a very quick summary of what happened in her breakout room.
Yeah. So in my breakout room, we had quite a different set of different discussions. One was about a travel service person interested in coming to rural Japan. And then we had people asking how did the experience change me? What is in it for the Karisomin to go to such places, and what do they get? And then we had a question about how Nakatsugawa is dealing with the population decrease. And then we had a person who's interested in being a Karisomin, and she had some questions about what was the most challenging experiences you had there. Yeah.
Great, thanks very much. And Kingsley?
Yes.
So this was breakout room number 2.
Right, and we talked about the company times community in rural Japan generally, and we were just talking about different ways we could benefit the community, and the community could benefit companies. So for example, the employees could send their children to the farmers market to learn more about agriculture and logistics, and the companies could purchase the products. The children can spend some time in the community and build connections. And they can also, if we were to expand the scope, maybe make it into a family event that could that could be a better platform for building a community and bring the benefits to everyone rather than just the children. So expand the scope of the event, I think, would be a great benefit as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. And Zoe, just a quick summary of what we spoke about at Koriyama.
Yep. So in our breakout room, which was company times community, focusing on Koriyama, we heard from many different people about their connection to this event tonight, including a couple of local businesses in Fukushima Prefecture. One of them in Koriyama, Horaya, which sells produce, koji, so things like miso and amazake, and also for British Hills, which is an educational facility, but also accommodation facility. They hold events there. We also heard from Keith, who was talking about his work connecting Kagawa and San Francisco with local exchanges, which sounded really interesting, even introducing local products to America, which is maybe something that we could think about in the future for Koriyama. What was really interesting was that Horaya, the business in Koriyama, said they'd be interested in working together on the farmers market, maybe figuring out how their products would work with the items that the kids would be producing, or even selling their soy sauce, which is good with barbecues, apparently. And Felicity from British Hills was talking about how they've had experience with that kind of market in the past in a different area. So it's definitely something that maybe can be explored in the future.
Great, thanks very much. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground this evening, and I'm sure everyone's feeling fairly tired with all the information that they've had to process. I'd like to thank you all very much again for spending this time with us. So I'd just like to close with, by going back to my presentation, if that would be okay, Sam. This is a key message from my perspective, that Japan's rainforest of cultural diversity is burning. It is a very serious problem. We are losing many manifestations of culture all over this country very, very quickly as the elderly people move on. And we're just losing cultural identity in one region to the next, from one village to the next. And it's being replaced by the culture of convenience, which is increasingly looking the same wherever in the world you go. So I'm hoping that we can actually work together to find a way to at least slow down this trend and to find the best value that is still out there. I mean, why should you care? Well, to find out, let's take the next step together. And I hope that you will get in touch with us. So you can contact us at this QR code. Please leave your name and details, and we'll be very happy to get back to you. Now, the members of the Fellows of the RSA represent at a very wide range of different realms of experience and expertise. So in this kind of engagement, they too will be facilitators of community-company interaction. Keith is a fellow. We were just hearing about his interaction between Kagawa and San Francisco. There are other members like Brendan, another fellow of the RSA. Quite a lot of us are already engaged in regional Japan. So please use this network for your benefit at companies, if that's where you work. And if you're on the JET program, let's find a way for you to be sponsored by companies so that we can really start spreading the Shuraku cloud and making the great cultural value that's available in regional Japan, make it available to the world. So once again, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone at the BCCJ. Thank you on the RSA-JFN side as well. And I look forward to communicating with you again. I'm sorry that we weren't able to speak with everybody in person at the event this evening, but thank you very much.